So would you stand and we'll worship together? In the bleak midwinter, all creation groans for a world in darkness, frozen like a stone. Light is breaking through in a stable for a throne, and he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And unto us a child is born, King of kings and Lord of lords, and he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. If I were a wise man, I would travel far. And if I were a shepherd, I would do my part. But poor as I am, and I will give to him my heart. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. Unto us a child is born, King of kings and Lord of lords, and he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. Here within a manger lies the one who made the starry skies, his baby born for sacrifice, Christ the Messiah. To our hopes and to our fears, Savior of the world appears, the promise of eternal years, Christ the Messiah. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And he shall reign forevermore, forever. Sing it again. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And unto us a child is born, King of kings and Lord of lords, and he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. One more time. And he shall reign forevermore, forevermore. Amen.
Historically in my life, I have not always been a patient person. I think parenthood has really helped a lot in that area. I didn't like to wait in lines. They would just make me angry. I actually was in traffic in Los Angeles a number of years ago, and I was living down there, and I hated the traffic so much one day. I was getting motion sickness driving my little stick shift car. I was trying to drive 20 miles, and it took me about 3 hours. I was so angry and so frustrated, I packed my apartment up, and I moved to Portland, Oregon that day. And then it wasn't until I was in Redding, California, that I called my girlfriend to let her know I had moved and thought maybe we should break up. I'm not proud of that moment. I should have done it a better way. But I felt I needed out. I felt like I had to run. I just did not have the patience for living in Los Angeles. When I get to my final destination, like if you go to a grocery store or someone's house or we're getting home, I would have my seatbelt off and the door open, and I would try to get out of the car even before the car engine had shut off. I wanted to move. I wanted to save every second that I could. I had an issue with being very impatient and moving, trying to get to the next thing as fast as I could. And then I got married, and I realized there are people who don't think like me. And that was not an easy transition. I mean, hypothetically, we might pull up to a destination where we're going together, and I would be out of the car, the engine still hadn't died, but I've got the key in my hand, and I'm already halfway to the building that we're walking into, and she's still in the car, hypothetically, leisurely, taking her time, looking for things. making sure she has the things that she needs. And I'm not understanding what is, how are you not ready? I mean, you had all the time while I was driving, so that you could already be ready to get out of the car at the same time and we could walk in together. I had some growing to do. And what I have learned over the years is it had less to do with just being impatient. What it really had to do was control. I needed to feel like I had control in my life, and I was doing everything that I could to avoid conflict and pain. And I thought, if I'm always moving ahead, if I'm always pressing to the next thing, if I'm always thinking about something else in the future, then I don't really have to deal with where I am right now, in this moment, today, and the things that are weighing on me, the emotions I don't want to feel about the relationships in my life, or how things aren't working out how I wanted them to, or expectations being broken. And I didn't like that. So if I could just stay one step ahead, maybe I could control the pace and speed of my life, then maybe I would feel better, because maybe then I could focus on that than the things that were happening around me that I didn't like, because I didn't want to feel that. So if you could take a moment, turn to the people around you, come up with a few top annoying places that you have to wait, that you hate. And if the people around you, you've never met them, introduce yourself and ask them, what is the most annoying place that you have had to wait? So on your mark, get set, and go. One of the positives about waiting is that it requires of us, and it reminds us that we are not in control. And we can't get things around us to move maybe at the pace that we're wanting them to go, or to have the outcome that it is that we're wanting to see happen. And when we can't get things in line, it reminds us we're not in control of every single aspect. When we can get things around us to move at our speed, we feel like we're more in control. We have some say in our destiny and the direction, and we can avoid all of the things that when I can avoid things that are going to make me wait, I feel like I'm beating the system. Somehow I have avoided, I didn't get caught in that traffic, I knew the back road, or I knew how to do something, and I feel like I get a surge of adrenaline, and I go, yes, I am the master and commander here. There's something about waiting that reminds us that there's something going on, that we're a part of a much bigger narrative, and we don't have the ability to call all of the shots in our life. And that is what Christmas time, it's a time of remembering, and a time that reminds us of waiting, where there's an expectation of something that is about to happen, something that is coming. For hundreds of years, the promise that a Messiah was going to come, there was a promise to humanity that the Christ is going to come, and that a child was going to be born, who was Jesus, who's going to set the people free. And for hundreds of years, there were people whose lives were marked simply by waiting. That was the definition and defining characteristic of their life. Their entire existence was marked by active waiting. And there are other people whose lives were concluded when they finally got to interact with that promise. A lot of the days and weeks leading up to Christmas, they can become kind of a blur. And they can be very... we can forget about them, because when the day finally comes, when the day of Christmas comes, there's this huge buildup. I mean, because in our family, we count down the days. We do the little rings of paper. Every day you take a ring off. We do the Advent readings every night, and we have this little Christmas tree, and every day every kid gets to add one little ornament. It's like a little paper ornament to the Advent tree, and we listen to the Cinnamon Bear radio program every night. Does anyone know the Cinnamon Bear? No one? We have 1, 2, 3. All right, well, let me tell you, there is a radio show that started in 1937, and it's this kind of the story of a teddy bear and these two kids, and they lost the silver star, and anyhow, they're going to find it, and it was recorded in 1937, and you guys don't know this. Well, it's an old-timey radio show, and my kids absolutely love it. So every night, you can do it on YouTube. Just look up YouTube, The Cinnamon Bear. And there's no video, it's just all audio. And we listen to that every night, and they absolutely love it. And we are working towards the day of Christmas. But then the day of Christmas comes, the big event, you get the presents, you get the food, you get the family, there's all the travel that has to happen, and kind of this accumulation that has finally come. And then after Christmas, you've got the de-escalation, or for some, heading up to New Year's and what we're going to do then. But, again, you've got the sugar coma, you got this gluttonous overload, you got the sleeping and the football games, and you're just trying to recuperate, and then maybe you have more traveling. You got to get back from wherever it was that you had been, and you can kind of feel so exhausted. And then you got to get back into normal life, and we got to start moving towards the rest of the year, because we start over again. And maybe you're like, ooh, Valentine's Day, or maybe in the church we're starting to think, how do we start ramp up and gear towards Easter? In Luke chapter 2, there's a story that oftentimes gets overlooked because it wasn't a part of the main story, because it's a part of the buildup that sometimes we forget about. Starting in verse 1, now in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken to all the inhabited earth. Then the birth of Jesus happens, and the shepherds, they hear this amazing news from the angels, and they come to see the baby, and Mary is pondering all of these wonderful things in her heart. Verse 21, on the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise the child, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. When the time came for the purification rites required of the law of Moses, which is 40 days after Jesus would have been born, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, as it is written in the law of the Lord. Every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. Now there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's Messiah. Moved by the Spirit, he went into the temple courts. When the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him what the custom of the law required, Simeon took him in the arms and praised God. And he said, Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for the revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. The child's father and mother marveled at what it was that was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary his mother, this child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and the sword will pierce your own soul too. There was also a prophet, Anna, the daughter of Penuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was very old. She had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then was a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple, but worshiped day and night, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. When Joseph and Mary had done everything required of the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee to their own town, Nazareth, and the child grew to become strong. He was filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was on him. First, we have a man named Simeon who he's old, and at some point in his life, it had been revealed to him by God, you're not going to die until you see the Messiah, the Christ. You get to see Jesus. So you kind of have the sweet deal. Okay, first of all, you're not going to die until you get to see the promise, which is what not just you, but the entire country had been waiting for. It's going to be revealed to you, the one who's going to redeem and save the world. And the chapter began talking about Caesar Augustus, who's going to have a census for the entire population of the Roman Empire that he controlled, in essence, the greatest power in the world at that time, which is a reminder to us that who are reading it, as we read this, it's designed to say, we have this prophecy And it's going to come while the people of God are under this Roman occupation. They're not free to do what it is that they want to do. They cannot live how it is that they want to live. They're under the control. They're an oppressed people under the Roman Empire. And when Simeon and Anna were young, they watched their people crumble under the Roman Empire, and they became a conquered people. So Simeon gets this deal from God. Hey, you get to see the Christ before you die. You get to see the Redeemer of my people. And I'm like, that is a sweet deal to be able to get from God. His eyes were scarred from watching the battles and the wars and seeing people crumble before other powers, watching his people fall apart. So he's getting very excited here. This is the promise of God that is going to happen in his lifetime. So then he gets this prompting one day by the Holy Spirit to go to the temple to see the fulfillment. And it is possibly the last day on earth. And so the flip side is, well, I better get all my affairs together because I may not be coming home from the temple. But he goes to the temple that day, and if I'm Simeon, and I've seen literally people ripped from their homes, and the reason that Caesar is doing this census and of the whole entire population is so that he can make sure that he's getting every penny squeezed out of every single person. They need to be paying all of their taxes. Everything that is due to him, everyone is accounted for. If you're going to show up at the temple and you've got this anger and hatred towards the Roman, I want to see someone who's going to lead the revolt and bring my people back to God. I want to look for someone who's trained and ready to lead the people. So the people who are looking for someone, they're not usually looking for a weak person. They're looking for someone physically imposing, someone with a fire in their eyes, and someone who is ready to finally stand against the Roman emperor, who's going to redeem the Jews. No longer are we going to be the oppressed people. We're finally going to be on top. And I imagine looking for a warrior. Not just a warrior. I imagine that warrior is going to have a dozen, 50, 100 other men around him that are willing to lay down their life for him, fully armed. And I imagine this partly because the prophecy said he's going to come with a sword, and that's, at least that's how I imagine him to be. Sword in the way that I think of a sword. But Simeon got something different. He walks in and sees this infant, and he sees this little baby. And we don't know how he knows other than God told him, but he knows right away that it's the child, and he walks over and he takes the child in his arms. I'm ready to go and be with you, Father, because I have been able to see the redemption of my people, Israel. The light of the world has come, and I've gotten to hold it. And he starts to praise God. I have seen your salvation. But the thing is, he never saw it happen. All he saw was a baby. He never saw Israel redeemed. He never saw the freedom of his people. He never saw the battle that he imagined in his mind that was going to happen, the battle that was prophesied that would come to bring freedom for his people. And when he saw the child, he's like, I'm ready to go. I can now die in peace. I think there's something about Simeon that we can learn from. Because sometimes I can be very American, where I want to see the finished product. I want to know what the end result is going to be as I'm walking into this time of pain or frustration or waiting, and I don't like it. As long as I know what the end result is, then I'm much better. I don't mind the battle. I don't mind the struggle so much. As long as I know we're going to win in the end. I get what it is that I want in the end. And sometimes I don't trust things until I have that final product, until the battle's over, until I have the trophy in hand. Then I know the battle's over. I won. Everyone else lost. I get it. When I lived in Europe, I used to go to soccer games, and I remember talking with this guy that was telling me about the best soccer match he ever watched. And he said they battled and they fought, and it was this incredible game. These two teams were going at it, and it ended in a tie. And I'm thinking, that's the best game you ever saw? That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm thinking, that's got to be exhausting to battle and to not have won. And I love soccer. I absolutely love it. But I want to see someone win at the end of it. I want to know who is, the best, who gets the trophy, who gets to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. If you don't get batting average that says you have tons and tons of hits and runs, you don't get the spotlight. So we use our skill, we use our talents, we use all of our abilities. We want to get ahead, make sure that we're a part of that final product. We want to be on the winning side so that I know that I'm of worth and of value. Sometimes when God is moving in our lives and in the world, we only trust it if we think we're going to be a part of the finished product. And if the finished product happens fast in us and around us. So my question is, how old would Jesus have to have been for you to believe that he is the Messiah when you get to the temple? Because if you had overheard Simeon say, this is the one, this kid, this baby is the one, this is the Messiah that we've been waiting for, this is the one who's going to turn the whole world upside down, and it's going to cause his mother pain because it's going to cost him his life for humanity, how old would Jesus have to be for you to believe that? I mean, because Jesus was only 40 days old at this point. He was more blanket than kid at this point, and just kind of rolled up in this ball, and Simeon picked this baby up and as he's explaining this. How old would Jesus have to be for you to believe that? Because sometimes I get the wrong ideas about God. And he gave us an imagination, and I love that. But the problem I find is that God rarely cooperates with my imagination. He gives us imagination, and then we develop, we kind of get an expectation based on what our imagination, well, this makes the most sense. This is what I think God is wanting to do, and so this is what God is going to do. And then we start to come up with a timeline, and then, so we throw the basketball up in the air for God. Here's your, ball, God. All I need you to do, I've done the work for you. All you have to do is slam dunk that and put the ball in the net. And I made it so easy for you, God, because I came up with such a good situation that if you just did this, everything would work out how I want it and when I want it, because I put the ball in the air, so that means can we just get past the pain? Can we get past the struggle? Can we get past the waiting right now? Because I threw the ball in the air. I did my part. God, if you're really God and you're really a loving God, then you will do your part when I want, how I want it. But when it starts to happen differently than that, I get really frustrated. I don't know if God has ever disappointed you. Not that God did something wrong, but maybe our expectation, we just got frustrated. God, you didn't work how I wanted you to, and now I'm frustrated. Has God ever disappointed you in a certain situation that you thought, God, this is really how you should be working? And about 3/4 of the way through the situation, you're starting to go, oh, I don't know that this is going to happen how I thought it was supposed to happen. I don't know if you've ever been there in your life. No, this isn't ending how I thought it would end. And I think of Simeon. I mean, how long do you have to wait for God? I mean, how long have you already been waiting? How old are you? How long do you have to watch? And how many times in this process have you doubted, God, am I really going to be the guy that gets to see this? I mean, I know you told me I'm going to get to see it, but I'm struggling to have any hope left. What if I missed it? What if I blew it? What if I didn't hear you right? Or what if you told me, but I didn't show up when, because I was sick about a month ago, and what if it was back then? What if I didn't hear God? Should I have dated this other girl because now I've got problems in my life, and what if I just dated someone else, or maybe if I had gone to this school or that school, or what should I have taken a different job because now I'm not seeing how it is to get where it is that what if I missed out on the direction that you had for my life? What if I took the wrong path? What if what if my sin took me out of commission? What if because I did something that I'm no longer able to be used by you, God? What if? Anyone ever gone in their head and just asked, what if? Man, that's a dangerous place to go. The mind is a dangerous place to go. Never go alone. Take a buddy in there with you. You need to have someone roping up and going in with you. Or what if we're simply being invited into the process? Where God is inviting us in. Kind of wrap your head on this one. We're being invited in even in the infancy stages. We keep wanting to see maybe the final product or to be close to the final product. We're still waiting for the action or the clear signs that we can charge in, use our gifts, use our strength. But do we have enough faith to move with God when we only get 1%? I'm going to grow something in you because that is far more important than using you. And today is really just the first step in a very long journey. Or do we wait and not get on board until we're about 75 to 85% completed, and then we'll move forward with you, God? Because it's amazing how fast we want to move until someone else is in charge. And then, okay, I just want you to slow down. Like, so if I'm driving a car, I'm okay going at high speeds. That doesn't scare me. But if, you have my wife or someone else driving at high speeds, I'm like, whoa, okay, let's slow down a little bit. Taking that turn a little fast, aren't you? Did you see these other cars? I start to sweat. I'm holding on to things. She's still 15 miles under what I would be driving the same road on. I don't know if you've ever done that. You start pointing at everything I'm sure they're aware of. Did you? Ah. Whereas I'll be charging forward and putting the pedal down. When someone else is in control of my life, I don't like that. What if someone else is in control of your job? Some of us, we love change. I don't know if there's any. I love change. I'm one. I love change. But I hate it when someone else puts change on me. I don't like that. I love surprise parties. I do not like them when they have a surprise party for me. I love to be a part of them, but don't surprise me. My wife did that one year. I was such a jerk. She had a surprise party for me. This is not how I saw my night going. This is not what I want to do with my special night. But then, how do I plan someone for someone else? That'll be fun. We can think about, we're such a mix of inconsistencies. We don't mind moving things and changing things as long as we're the ones in control of the change that's happening in our hearts and in our lives. When God is in control and things start moving in us, whoa, God, slow down. Take it easy. You're going a little too fast. I don't see the long-term strategy here. I'd like to hear a little bit more, God. Can we have a little bit more discussion about what it is that you're wanting to do and why you're making certain decisions for my life? I just want to know some of the reasons behind these decisions because I don't know that I agree with them. I want to know how long this is going to take because if this is going to be a really long, drawn-out process, like my life, you're trying to grow me to be like Jesus, come on, is there a faster way we can get there? Like maybe by the end of this year so that then I'm done and now I can go do the things that I want to do. I don't know if you've ever done that to God. Maybe you've done it to a boss. Can we just move forward? This process of change is taking way too long. Which makes me wonder, this Christmas season, if this isn't a reminder to us that God is moving on a timeline that we know nothing about, because God is never in a hurry and God is never late. And sometimes we get so sure, I get so sure. I know exactly what it is that God is wanting to do in my life and how He should show up in my life. And then maybe I wonder, God, when are you going to show up in this area? What about my career? What about my job? What about... because God, you said I'm going to shape and influence people's lives, but this job feels like a dead end. I don't see how you're going to use that. Or God, I know how you're going to help me get out of debt, and I know you want me to be free, but that's not even going to happen in this job either. And I know, God, that you want to help me to have maybe the relationship of my dreams. God, I'm single, and I really, I look around at the group of friends that I'm hanging out, and I just don't see that person who's going to meet all of my needs. And then maybe I start to ask the deeper question, which is, I don't like this question. Am I the right person? Because would I be the dream for someone else? And then I just get kind of sad because that seems... I know me, and I don't know that I'll ever be that person. So I'd rather find the perfect person for me, because then maybe I don't have to change, and I don't have to be the perfect person. They'll have to deal with me, and I'm a jerk, but, Maybe that's their dream. I'll just pretend that's their dream. I don't know if any of that's making any sense to you. God has a way of inviting us into His work and what He's doing in our life in the infancy stages. And then He grows us. He walks with us. We take very small steps and learn to partner with God and to live our life with God. Imagine waiting for hundreds of years for the Messiah to come, and then you have a baby that's born. I mean, wouldn't it be better if a prophet just came down straight from the sky, the Messiah came down from heaven, or a person in shining armor who is trained and ready and confident to lead? God, why could you not have done that? I want the change in my life to happen. I want it immediately. If I was Simeon and I'm looking for, I'd be looking for like a superhero. I want the Marvel comic book story to happen where the leaders are going to come, free us from all oppression. There might be a battle and some superpowers here and there, and maybe a little flying, but that's okay. But I want to end knowing we're going to win and it's going to happen and we're going to start it. And if you could do it all within a 2-hour frame like of a movie, that would be even better, because I don't like to see the oppression my people are under. But it comes through an infant. And the problem is, God, here's another problem I don't like, is I'm not going to be alive in 30 years to see when this is going to end. I don't get to see anything that this little baby is going to grow up to do publicly. And if I was even to be alive, I would still be confused, because I would start to see Jesus, who starts to have a conversation with people, and the words coming out of his mouth are not the words that I want to hear. They're not what I expected. And then Jesus starts to do things differently than I imagined, because he's not uniting us for an uprising against Rome. And we're not going to live by the sword, he says, but we're going to live another way that brings freedom to our hearts, freedom to our souls, and we're going to live more. And we're going to forgive more, and we're going to give more. And it's going to be a very slow revolution that's going to turn the world upside down. And the only thing he did quickly was to give his love and grace. And the only thing Jesus did quickly was to move to the cross, so that by his death you and I can be free, so that by his death we can entrust our lives to him, so that we can be transformed and made new and made whole. And that is so much better than I could have ever imagined. So this Christmas season, it's a reminder to us that God does not move quickly as we would like, because he waited hundreds of years and then gave us an infant. And Christmas is a reminder to us that if there is anything that God has spoken to us about, but you ended up being disappointed because things didn't turn out how you wanted them when you wanted them to, every moment of waiting is an opportunity for us to connect to God. Every moment of anticipation is a moment for you and God to connect and to refocus on what it is that God is doing inside of you, how God is growing you, where God is really wanting to take us. And then we get Anna in the last few verses. Verse 36, there was the prophet Anna, the daughter of Penuel of the tribe of Asher. She was very old. She had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then as a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple but worshiped day and night, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who are looking forward to the redemption of Israel. I don't know if there's any history buffs. Are there history buffs in this room? Anyone? We got one history buff. Rhonda, you are also a history buff. You didn't raise your hand, but I'm going to call you out. I love studying the history. And part of this was spurred by Diane Garrett. She was asking, we were talking about it last week, Christmas was not celebrated until 400 years after the death of Jesus, roughly. There was a huge winter festival that Rome had every year. It's called the Festival of Lights, and they were worshiping the god Saturn. And so the Christians thought, well, we have this wonderful festival that happens in the wintertime. It's the most important festival of the year, and we want to have fun too. We don't really want to worship the Roman god Saturn, and by the way, which we then named a planet after, and also Saturday. It's where we get that name for the day of the week. But we have all this meat, and we've been storing it, and it's going to spoil. We should probably eat it all. Let's have a feast. Let's bring it out. I've got these lights up in the attic. We're going to bring them down for the Festival of Lights, and we have all these evergreens. So these people who are following Jesus, followers of the way of Jesus, they decided instead of worshiping Saturn, we're going to worship Jesus on this day. We don't want to go get drunk. We want to do something positive. We want to get excited about something. And so over time, the Christians started to outnumber the rest of the population, and it became Christmas that we now celebrate today. And we still do many of the same traditions that started 400 years ago. Anna was of the tribe, by the way, that had nothing to do with this. That was just free because I love the history of it. Anna was from the tribe of Asher. And that was a tribe that lived in the north of Israel. And the tribe of Asher had been brutally annihilated. They had been brutally enslaved. Her husband most likely had either been killed right in front of her after 7 years of marriage, or he had been taken off and enslaved to work and worked to death. So when this woman walks in and says she has been waiting day and night for the redemption of Israel, these are not just some little nice, pretty little words about a person who she's, well, maybe one day we will get our power back. She's a very elderly woman who has watched with her eyes the loss of her people, direct pain in her own family, her own heart. And when she says the redemption of Israel is here, she is saying words of hope. This is the one who's going to save the future for our people. She's not going to live to see Jesus go to the cross either, to save humanity. She just sees this infant, and she is filled with hope because she has waited so long, because she has lost so much. So in the Christmas season, oftentimes we think about some of the grief and loss that maybe we have seen over the previous year. In Christmas, it's my favorite time of the year. I absolutely love it. But it's also, for some of us, for many of us, some of the most painful time, because in our families, we start to think about people that aren't here this year that we had around last year. And it doesn't mean that they died, though that is the case for some of us. But it's also maybe relationships have changed and they're different. And things are not the same as they were a year ago. And maybe through addictions or that have a hold on you or others, there's been deeper pain or different situations have happened in your life that have caused some heartache. And Christmas is a reminder to us that Jesus stepped into human history to turn everything on its head. That Jesus stepped into your life and into my life, and that Jesus is crazy about us. And I don't know if that's been communicated at all really today for you, but God is insanely crazy and in love with you. And I absolutely love that. So much so that he sent his only son to be born here and to die and turn the world upside down so that the pain that you and I have been in hurts, and it could be mistakes that have been done to you. It could have been hurts and mistakes that have been done by you that you carry can be healed and redeemed. And that is the message of Jesus through Anna. She watches the one who's going to be and bring the future for her people because she has been invited even into this infancy stage. So maybe Christmas is a time for us to notice where God has invited us forward and to remember that God is actually moving. And maybe God's moving in more subtle ways than we can usually see. And that we're reminded by Anna and Simeon that by waiting and hoping and having an expectation that God is going to move in our lives and in our families, and we can start to wake up every morning and look at the sun and just daring it to rise because every single day is a chance for you and I to connect to God through hope and anticipation. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31 says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." And the word wait is described as hope. We're not waiting doing nothing. Sitting on a lazy boy, smoking a cigarette, wondering if, is this ever going to happen? When you wait on the Lord, you're engaged in hoping that the Lord is going to move. And that is the Christmas season. A reminder to us that whatever expectation we have in our life, with our relationships, in the space of our world, every single day, it doesn't happen as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to connect with God, to be able to wait and hope for the future. One of my favorite conversations I like to have is to wonder, what is it that God's going to do in our lives individually? I absolutely love talking with people about that. And how's God going to move in our church? And typically, whenever I hand books out and give them away, it always has to do with, God, what are you doing in us, and what are you doing with us as a church and as a community of followers of Jesus in Cathlamet? And I don't want us to only be people who move only, when God has done all the work for us, and then we move forward. I always want to be the people that through hoping and expectation we can hear and move forward through a steady day in and day out, because we're hearing God's voice and we're putting ourselves in a position every day to listen. Are you listening, though? In your life and in your space, whoever comes through the doors this morning, when you walked in, I love that we celebrate and we worship God together. But whatever is looming inside of you, whether it's hurts and fears, and you may be wondering what it is that God's doing in your life this morning, I want to encourage you that Christmas is a time and a season to remember that God is moving even when you don't see what God is doing. And He's doing it sometimes at the very early stages. That's when He invites us in. It's just a matter of us recognizing, oh, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, God. And, oh, this is going to be a long process. You may be still trying to determine what it is that your relationship with God is going to look like and how you're going to interact with God in your life. So I want to invite you into this conversation with God that He began. And He began a lot longer than maybe you knew He was talking to you, a lot longer than you were aware of, because that happens really for all of us. We get into situations and we realize, oh, that's what you're doing, God. We want to be a people that through hope and expectation can constantly, we can be searching and listening to what God is saying and to where God is moving in our lives and in this church and in this community, and be asking the questions, God, what are you doing in here? So that we can be like Anna and Simeon, who say, we are a part of what God is doing early, so then we get to be a part of the future. I just want to close in prayer. God, as we even just go to the communion table and we go back into worship, thank you for just the communion, that you gave us this ability to have a reminder to continually be drawing to you and submitting to you and letting you be in control of our lives. Where we come to the bread and we come to the cup, your body broken, the juice poured out as the blood for the forgiveness of our sins, so that we can come to you and that you do the work of healing us. We don't do that. You do the work of forgiving and transforming us. We just submit to you and allow you to be the one in charge and at your pace. God, we thank you for this place that you've put us, the space that you've entrusted us with. And I thank you for what you've done in our hearts and in our lives. And I pray a prayer of hope and anticipation that every one of us would slow down and wait for the future that we know that you are directing us towards. And I pray that all of us would be the kind of people who are sensitive enough to hear your voice and spot you when you are moving in your infancy.